All right. Welcome to the IAG Thursday thing. This thing that we do every Thursday. I've got the sweet. I don't know. Am I selling cars? What am I doing? Either way, this thing that we do every Thursday where we hang out and sometimes you accidentally learn something. This week we're going to go on a little bit of a rant. I'm very sick of certain how am I going to put this without pissing anybody off? There's some very influential folks out there, maybe not exactly within the Subaru community, but spreading a lot of misinformation about how certain things work. Now, it isn't just one area. It's all over the place, but one of the biggest ones is DCCD, and this one hit me again just the other day, where a certain YouTube channel that likes to do expensive and cheap cars at the same time did an expensive and cheap transmission swap, and they went to explain DCCD, and they were closer than some, but totally botched it again. And it kills me. It absolutely kills me. Uh-oh, James wants in. This could be good. All right, you want it in.
All right. I'm allowed to say that YouTube channel because I've seen that video.
Yeah.
All right. Donut Media has no idea what the hell they're doing. But when it comes to I just want to give props to whoever sold him a stock 04 STI 6-speed swap for $12,000.
Oh my God, right? Yeah, they way overpaid for that thing. You know, I don't want to hang up too much on this because I want to keep the information in the front, but yeah, $12,000? Are you kidding me?
You know that dude was just doing like the Birdman, like rolling a Play-Doh snake. Like,
if you haven't watched the video
afterwards,
go watch the video. Okay, there is some actual like good information on how to do the swap and things in there, but man, they got hosed. So I don't know. Maybe they took that, they got a deal on it, and they're like, "How much does this all cost new or something?" And went and just got a bunch of that. That had to have been where that pricing came from. There's no way they paid $12,000 for that unless they bought a car and pulled the trans out.
I guarantee you, some dude's like, "Hey, you know, I know a guy's got a 6-speed swap." And the guy's like, "Yeah, I'll give you $12,000, don't it?" And the person's like, "No problem." That's what I'm willing to bet happened. But to all the WRX people in here, what you should pay for a used 6-speed swap is very dependent. I want to touch that real fast.
We do that at the end.
Okay, never mind.
Get to this info.
You do your thing.
But you're right. But we'll get it. Come back in like 20 minutes. Okay.
All right.
I'll
mute.
All right. So now we figured out who we're talking about, what the situation is. Long story short, DCCD. We're going to talk about DCCD today. That's the big thing that gets talked about improperly on how it functions. And a lot of this comes from Subaru themselves really didn't have a good way to explain it, because explaining it is kind of clunky how it actually works. So what they kind of did was explain how it feels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let our lovely voice radio host Warranty, he's going to read the description that Subaru officially gives of what DCCD is.
Yep. The driver's control center differential, DCCD, allows the center differential locking of the WRX STI to be dialed in and adjust its handling. It adjusts both an electromagnetic multi-plate transfer clutch and mechanical locking of a limited slip differential, LSD, to distribute torque to the front and rear wheels. Auto mode identifies the ideal power distribution for changing conditions, while Auto Plus keeps more power up front for increased traction. Auto Minus transfers more power to the rear for tighter cornering, and the 6-step manual mode locks in the driver's favorite handling characteristics.
Okay, so, and I understand why they have to explain it like that. Because if you're just somebody who's coming in off the street and you're like, what is this crazy ass dial? This explanation that I'm about to give you on how DCCD actually functions is super clunky to try to explain. And if you're not really a car person, it's a real pain in the ass. But the reality of it is, that's not how it works. It's kind of how it feels, but it's not how it works. All right. Let's get to the base of this, okay? What is DCCD? DCCD is a system that Subaru derived. They actually did put DCCD inside of 5 speeds. Also, the Japanese domestic market, STI RAs, did get DCCD for those too. And those, the concept of this was to first give the car a more extreme torque split and then control the lock. Okay, that's how much the differential will allow the front axle speed to be different than the rear axle speed. At full lock, they have to be identical. Okay, when it's open, they are completely separate. The torque split, though, the torque split never changes. The torque split in anything 05 STI in prior, that's 05 US domestic market STI in prior, so basically Peanut I and earlier, is 35-65. Okay, 35% of the power goes to the front, 65% of the power goes to the rear. 06 or newer, or if you have a 1.1 transfer gear or a 354 rear diff, so that's the easiest way to figure this out. That split from 06 and newer is 41 front, 59 rear. And what they did is add essentially a helper diff in there also. So, these units are super simple. If you've ever had a chance to pull apart a DCCD differential, there's not much to it. It looks a lot like a clutch type diff, except on one side there's a big ass magnet. And that's essentially all it is a big magnet that smashes these clutch plates together, and that's what causes the lock. So essentially, when you are putting the car in full lock, if you were in manual mode and putting the car in full lock, the magnet's going to be at its highest. And again, this is oversimplifying stuff, but essentially the magnet's going to be at its highest. It's going to force the clutch packs as much together as it can. It'll essentially, quote unquote, weld the diff. The front and rear tires have to move at the same speed. This is why they say that's 50-50 torque distribution. Well, they can't move separately. Okay. And then if it's open, they call it 35-65 if you're in an earlier one, or 40, it's more rear biased, but it's because the center diff is no longer in the conversation of controlling, are the rear tires moving any faster than the front tires? And with a diff being open, the path of least resistance is where the torque is going to go. And if more of the power is going to the rear, those are the ones that are going to break traction first. And when traction breaks, that's the easiest place for the torque to go. So, what I really like to do is talk about this by explaining it like we're looking at an old Fox body Mustang with an open rear diff, or an old, F-body Camaro or something like that. Open rear diff, one wheel peel. All right, car revs up, dumps the clutch or whatever it's going to do. All the power goes out one wheel. It's the first one to break traction. That's where it's going. All the power is going to go there, and it's just going to sit there and peel while the other one stays solid. Now, if you were to weld the diff, or you were to put some sort of locking differential in there, or posi, or however you want to make that work, when you were to do that same clutch dump, both of the tires would want to spin, normally adding significantly more traction. Okay, but if it's open, power is going to go whichever way that breaks traction first. Now, a limited slip differential, how that works is it can sense essentially through friction, or in a mechanical differential. There's the speeds will change, and it knows that the speed is changing and will try to force torque one way or the other. Or in a viscous differential, if we do have those in older WRXs, or WRXs, these run in the center differential. That's actually, viscous means snot, essentially. It's a like a liquiding material, and the hotter that gets, the more friction it causes, and that's what's actually causing that lock to happen. Either way, they essentially can limit the speed from one wheel is different than the other wheel within that axle. Okay, so now we understand how a one wheel peel works. Okay, so if you could control that lock, like how much it's locking up, you could decide if you want a one wheel peel or you want this differential to be locked and essentially have, a welded diff or posi or whatever. So if you were to turn that whole concept sideways, and instead of looking at it as the rear diff of a Fox body Mustang or an old F body, that is now the center diff of your Subaru. And the front axle is one side, and the front diff is one side, and the rear diff is another side, with your center differential being in the middle, figuring this out. That is what DCCD controls, is the amount of lock that is right there. But understand, with DCCD, 35% of the power is always going to go towards the front axle, or, one side of this diff. And 65% of the power is going to go to the other side if you have an 05 STI or older. Or 41% of the power is going to go to the front, and 59% of the power is going to go to the rear if you have a older or a newer STI, 06 or newer. So what DCCD does is change the amount of lock, essentially how much it is going to allow your front axles to move at a different speed than your rear axles. This is why, if you look on your screen in manual mode or on your dial, it will say open or lock. It doesn't say 50-50 or, 35-65. That's not how that works. Okay, it's controlling lock, the speed difference between the front and the rear axles. That's it. Now, DCCD is pretty cool. You can do some neat stuff. What DCCD is doing, they get hung up on driver-controlled center differential, but the real star of this show here is actually the auto mode. Okay, DCCD is constantly varying how much lock or how much your front and rear wheels can move separate of each other. And it's doing that for different situations. So when you are accelerating out of a corner, or you're drag launching, or you're on the gas, you want as much traction as humanly possible. What it's going to do is add a bunch of lock. You're probably going to get upwards of 90% to 100% lock. Leaving corners, leaving straightaways, it's going to lock up as much as it can. And it's doing that to make sure you're getting the maximum amount of traction leaving. You're using as much tire as you possibly can. But it takes in the stock auto mode. So this is the factory DCCD controller. It takes in a lot of different things. It takes in steering angle. It takes in brake pressure. Takes in wheel speed, obviously. There's a lot of different parameters that it's looking at to figure out how much lock it needs. So let's say you're coming into a corner. So what it's going to do is, if you're braking in a straight line, DCCD is going to stay fairly locked, give you as much traction as you can, but immediately start unlocking as you start adding steering angle. When you start adding steering angle, what it's going to do is open the differential up so you can actually turn into the corner. The car will rotate more. And that's what you want it to do. You want it to act essentially rear-wheel drive turning into a corner. And so the diff will open up, allow you to turn into the corner, and as you start feeding more throttle to it, it'll start locking the diff more and more and more. This is why, from a a dynamic standpoint, when driving an STI, it tends to actually feel fairly rear-wheel drive when a lot of other cars that are using an all-wheel drive system tend to feel very front-wheel drive. And it's because it acts very rear-wheel drive. The beauty of this system is it's super simple. There's really not a lot to it. But how the auto mode works is a little complex until you understand how it actually functions. Going back to this, the auto mode, like I said, is for 99.99999% of people, auto's the answer. Leave it in auto. Don't touch auto. There's no reason for you to put it in manual, even in inclement weather and things of that nature. Auto, so in '08, DCCD got two more settings. They got Auto Plus and Auto Minus. So technically you had three settings for your DCCD that were still auto mode. You had your standard middle auto and then plus and minus. What those mean are your standard auto was just like your auto mode earlier. Auto Plus meant that the diff was a little bit more aggressive in as far as how much it was going to lock. Auto Plus tends to work better in inclement climates. Rain, things of that nature. If you're having traction issues and maybe your car's oversteering on track or something of that nature, and you need more traction leaving corners, or maybe you're ripping around on dirt and want the car to feel a little more stable, Auto Plus tends to be the answer for that. Auto Minus is kind of the opposite. It allows the diff to be more open. It's less aggressive when you're getting on the throttle, during braking, during acceleration, and it tends to make the car feel slightly more tail happy. This is why people believe that it makes it feel rear wheel drive. But Auto Minus is nice if you have if your car is understeering more, maybe you're on more of a mountainy road kind of situation, you just want the car to rotate more, maybe an autocross or something like that when you're trying to get the car to rotate a bunch more. Track use, stuff like that. Auto Minus might actually be the answer for you. You can kind of fine tune what you have going on with Auto Plus and Auto Minus. It's an awesome system, but understanding what it's doing will help you use it better. So manual mode, this is where stuff starts to get crazy. You'll get people telling you all sorts of crazy stuff about DCCD and how they're using it. My favorite one was, well, I do a bunch of drag racing, and I want the car to feel really rear-wheel drive, so I put it in manual open because that's basically rear-wheel drive mode when I drag race. So this is literally the polar opposite of what you want to do when you drag launch, is put it in open. Essentially what's going to happen is the first axle to break traction, which more than likely will be your rears because most of the torque is going there, that's where all the power is going to go. And what ends up happening is you also tend to break stuff this way because you're asking...
Hold on.
Yo.
So in DCCD Open, in a drag race environment, it's likely that the rears are going to lose traction. There's not going to be any more power going to the rears because torque split does not change. What's happening is that there's no correction mechanism in the center diff to lock the center, which unifies the wheel speed of the fronts and the rears, which in reality would move more power to the front. Instead, it's just going to let the rears spin and you don't go places. Meanwhile, the fronts in this open scenario are going to get the same normal torque split that they always got and no other intervention. So you're just kind of like front wheel drive for a second on the launch.
We need to find a way to turn you up.
Okay.
or eat your mic.
Turn it up. I can turn it up on the laptop.
Okay. So, yes, essentially it's not like the rears are getting more power because the torque distribution didn't change. Okay, if
the problem.
If you get one thing out of this entire conversation, it's DCCD does not change torque distribution. It changes lock. Okay? So, when you go and try to drag launch your Subaru, on or your DCCD based transmission Subaru, and you're in open, essentially the first wheels to brake, the first axle to brake traction is going to be the one that gets all of the torque. Torque is always going to take path of least resistance. Just how it works. Okay, it's a lot like air and anything else. Torque will take path of least resistance. The spinning wheels are going to be the ones that get it. So it isn't that the car's making any more power. It's there's nothing to force the fronts to do anything. Okay, now in the later model, 06 Plus, there is a helper diff, but it ain't enough. Okay, still the majority of the power is going to go out the rear.
Another comment. So if you have, let's say, the rears spinning faster than the fronts, and DCCD locks for that split second, which is what DCCD is designed to do, I guess you could call that transferring power to the front because that's locking the two sets of wheels. It's not really a torque split change.
It's just changing lock.
Thing.
Yep.
Right.
And that's what I'm trying to really beat home here is that's the big change. So if you were to when you put DCCD in lock on a drag strip, which honestly in some cases may be the answer because it's what auto is going to do when you launch anyway. If you put DCCD in lock, it's going to be essentially like a DSM or an Evo when they weld their center diff.
Yeah, don't do it though.
Yeah, you can break shit. You definitely can. And one of the nice things about DCCD is there is a little bit of slip there, enough to help you not break shit.
Yeah,
okay?
That's if you're drag racing, just for these people, or you're going to launch the car, leave it in auto. That slip is going to save your drivetrain. If you try to lock it and launch it, you will break the trans and ask me how I know. Especially if you're on a bias ply, you will destroy it. But leave it in auto, that little bit of slip, and you're starting mainly, depending on the year, with a rear-wheel drive bias, you're in a good spot. Don't mess with it unless you have to.
Hold on, getting there. Okay, and he 100% right. James is 100% right on that. You need that little bit of a slip to. That's one of the reasons a lot of people even go to a softer sidewall on their tires when they're drag racing and stuff too, just to give you that little bit of give, so it's not just immediately shocking everything. But that's here nor there. Long story short, leave the damn thing in auto. Once again, almost all roads here are going to lead to auto. One of the downsides you tend to see is people have a WRX and they do a 6-speed swap, but then they don't get any form of DCCD controller. If the DCCD is not seeing, if that diff is not seeing any form of voltage whatsoever, it defaults to open. So it doesn't know any different because it's not seeing any voltage. It's just going to stay open, and people tend to break stuff quite a bit that way too. You see a lot of broken axles with open DCCD because all the power just gets right to the rear. Where was I at? Okay. Let's talk about manual a little bit. So in what cases would you want to mess with the manual DCCD controller? They're very few. Okay. And there's very, very few. Lock is extremely rare to use, but can be useful if you are stuck in snow or the mud. That is about it. That is about the only time you would want to use that. I'm not going to lie, I played around with it using it ice racing before. And
on track.
What's that?
And on track. Remember? Road to the
I'll explain that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
it's a good story.
And we're going to get to it. So it's for the most part, the only time you would want to use that is if you're stuck in the mud and you're trying to get yourself out of a rut or something like that, and you desperately need the front wheels and the rear wheels to move at the same speed. Open, really the only reason you'd ever use that is to be a jackass. Okay.
Drift mode.
There are some Looney Tunes kids, especially down in Australia, who like to drag race, who prefer the older differentials because they didn't have a helper diff. So when you put the diff in open, it would truly be in open. You would get those guys who are drag racing who would try to do a burnout in open. I really don't recommend doing that. It's extremely hard on things, but that's how they were approaching that. The other nice thing is, oh man, I hate even telling people this, but if you have an older STI and you pull the e-brake, the DCCD will then go into open, and that essentially disconnects your front and rear axles from each other. So then you have less, it's less of a chance of you breaking something. Even if you're still slightly on the throttle, this is one of those rally only situations where understand that you are going to break stuff, but if it is worth it to you for time, you may want to think about that. But I don't recommend that for everybody. But that's one of the reasons that the older diffs, people really, really, those are treasured by especially the tarmac rally guys.
This is coming from the guy who would use the handbrake to settle down the rear of the car and get it to slide less.
Shush. We ain't talking about that.
We used to do that all the time with like the 04 STI.
Oh yeah.
You used to do that all. Just one notch up on the e-brake disconnects it, and you can do terrible things that break your drivetrain with it. But
it's a lot of fun till it does.
Yeah, I mean, your mileage may vary.
Yep.
Mine didn't vary very long, but you can do these things. But yeah,
not that you should.
That. No, don't do
it. So what warranty was referring to is I have a story where I was at I was at Road Atlanta, and I was coming through. There's turn 10A and 10B. They're really tight corners, and you come over this really crazy crest that's 11, and then you drop down this huge hill where these walls come in really close, and my ass was hanging out, and the car was oversteering really bad. That was through 12. 12 is a scary as hell corner. It's honestly my least favorite corner to drive through in any track I've ever been on in my life. It's terrifying. And I was running my 05 STI at that point, and the car was really unsettled through 12. I'm still adamantly leaving it in auto mode at this point. We tried a couple of different suspension things, and what would happen is I could get it to settle down through 12, and the car would be slow everywhere else. So the scheme I came up with, and actually functioned pretty well, is I would come over 11, and I would reach down, because the DCCD controller is right next to the shifter in the older cars. I'd reach down and put the trans in manual, which my DCCD wheel was already set almost to lock. So it was really close. And essentially what it would do when I put it into manual is it would force the car to understeer. And it would understeer the entire way through the corner, so it would settle the car down, and the second I got through the corner, I'd just reach down again, pop it back into auto, and I could complete a lap where 99% of the lap I was running in auto, and everything worked great, and then I was coming through 12, and I could settle the car down by doing that.
Dewey liked a loose car, so it was very, very easy to change direction, which was good for the rest of the track, but not when there's a high-speed corner with walls right next to it.
Yep. Yeah, it's the loose car worked great because it was fast everywhere else, but it was just it made me think about life choices going through 12. So there are options you can play with if you were to approach it like that, but they're very few and far between. But you're not going to be able to make those choices if you don't understand how it works. We went over the basic logic behind auto, how open and lock works. Let's talk about swaps here real quick. So when you do, first off, we're gonna head something off right now. Donut screwed up. At any point, I don't know why in the hell you would. There's no point whatsoever at this point unless your class forces you to stay with that OEM 5-speed for you to run a 5-speed. None. There's if you're going to do internal transmission work of any sort, don't buy a gear set. Don't do anything. Just go get a damn 6-speed. There is no gear set for a 5-speed that is going to equal the strength of a bone stock OEM 6-speed. Subaru didn't design the 6-speed. Getrag did. Okay, you want to see what happens when Subaru designs a transmission? Look at a 5-speed. Okay, you want to see what happens when Getrag does it because they're building something for a 911 and then Subaru comes along and says, hey, make that backwards so we can use it too? That's what the 6-speed is. Okay, they're not even close. If you ever get a chance, I'll try to post some pictures up of the main shaft size difference between a 5-speed and a 6-speed. It literally is double the size. There's no such, so putting any money into a 5-speed is ridiculous. So you're going to end up swapping. You know, whether you got a GC, whether you got, you know, a new WRX with the 5-speed plus an extra gear, one way or another, an STI 6-speed, if you're making any real jam, is probably going to be on the menu. But if you are getting an STI-based 6-speed and you're not getting one of the really early bug-eye ones, or not getting a legacy spec B one, both of them having viscous center diffs and not DCCD. But if you're getting either one of those, you're going to need some form of controller for DCCD. This is where aftermarket controllers come in. There's two big ones that come to mind right away that most people can get, and they're consumer grade and easy to get a hold of. You have DCCD Pro, which has been around forever. That's Spider's DCCD controller. That's a great unit. iWire even makes a really nice plug and play harness for those these days. Super awesome. Okay, big fan of those things. And that controller, it gives you an auto mode, gives you a manual mode, all the stuff you want. Map DCCD works very similar. It's actually got a couple of let's go back. The Spider DCCD controller is really easy to install and make look very OEM. The Map DCCD controller, which is the other one, is kind of it's this little box. It's got a knob on it. Works very similarly. They both have very similar features if you at the same price level. DCCD Pro, if you get a very basic one, tends to be a little bit cheaper. Map, right out of the gate, their base one, I think, is the only one that they make. Allows you to do some really cool tuning things within it. Most of it's above most people's heads. You don't even really got to worry about messing with it. But the cool thing they have is kind of a built-in auto plus and minus. When you're in auto mode on these, you can actually increase or decrease the level of how aggressive the auto mode is. So it's like an infinitely variable auto plus or minus. So if, let's say you're on a track or you're banging down a back road and your car is understeering really bad, you're doing autocross, whatever it is, and you want the car to rotate a little more, you can actually dial DCCD back and it will chill that out. So it'll chill out the amount of lock that it's putting in and allow the car to rotate more. Let's say that it's raining really bad or you're banging down a dirt road or it's icy or something like that, and you would like DCCD to be a little more aggressive, but, you know, not run around at full lock, you can turn it up. They have manual modes still built within it, but again, going back to this, you really don't need it. One of the nice things about the Map DCCD and the DCCD Pro is they also don't take in the same amount of inputs. Essentially, they're just using this little yaw sensor. It can basically tell if you're accelerating, decelerating, turning left or right, and it's basing all of that. All of its lock info is based just off of that, and some basic brake info and acceleration. That's it, and that's all it really needs. OEM DCCD is pulling stuff from everywhere. And there's an argument that it is a little more active, I guess. At least it's getting a little more data. From the driver's seat, well set up aftermarket DCCD controllers, honestly, have always worked better for me. But both are fantastic. Game fan, agreed. Auto on ice as far. We're going to get to a bunch of your questions here in a few minutes. but we are getting there. I don't know. Where do we want to go from there? That's pretty much it. I think we kind of hit DCD. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about? Oh, I know what you want to talk about. So there was a change made in 2018. Subaru started explaining DCCD slightly different. Okay, they started saying it was an electromagnetically controlled differential, and essentially saying that the helper diff was done away with. The thing is, I haven't been able to confirm nor deny what they were saying. I have yet to see one of these apart. What I can say is from the driver's seat, they feel identical. The torque split didn't change. It sounded like they went back to the older style in the way they explain it, the older style 05 and earlier STI style DCCD, but the torque split didn't change. So I would really like to get a hold of one of those and take it apart, but I haven't had a chance to get my hands on any of those. So I don't know if anybody has any input on that, but I have yet to see one of those apart.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if somebody on the inside has had a 2018 or newer STI DCCD apart, I'd like to know. And yeah, I think that's it. Was there anything you wanted to?
Question from the chat. You killed Kenny 404. What would cause DCCD to always be locked?
I did see that. The only thing I could think of with DCCD always being locked is either it have to see voltage all the time. So if you've got an aftermarket DCCD controller that isn't installed correctly, maybe that, because you got to put that goofy little yaw sensor somewhere flat. Okay. And if it's not flat, if it's like constantly seeing something, it's going to constantly think it's accelerating or decelerating or something. But that is one thing that could cause that. Other than that, maybe you got some straight voltage flying around there, bad stereo install or something else, or something is physically broke. Maybe you were hooning too hard.
Hey, sorry, I was muted. I actually just had a phone call. I had to deal with this directly. One of my customers, he has a low 8-second car in Trinidad.
Nice.
He's got a PPG dog box and everything else. He broke his transmission over the weekend because he tried to lock his diff. I just thought that was hilarious.
No way.
As we're talking about it. Yeah,
well, there you go, guys.
He tried working on his 60-foot, and he broke the entire transmission. Yeah, so don't do that. Once again, leave that in auto for launching purposes.
There's other ways to find 60-foot time.
I told Ned, wait, that car weighs less than 2,000 pounds. But he's a nutcase.
What kind of car is it?
Holy cow.
The GC.
Okay, I mean,
nice.
It's cut more than a Civic.
My recommendation, if he's got an aftermarket DCCD controller, because putting OEM DCCD in is hard. I wouldn't run the thing at lock, but if he's got an aftermarket one, maybe bump it up a little more. But man, if he just nated that thing, he's probably going to be skittish about that now.
I got to show you the video of it. These guys are wild. They have like some sketchy like above ground dyno that they break the car in with.
Yeah.
There's like 6 dudes standing on it while it's on the dyno to hold it down, and they're just going to town with it. It's hilarious.
That's what's up.
Yeah,
we need more of that.
Wild. I completely agree. But yeah, these guys are awesome.
I want some more hood rat, big power stuff going on.
Yeah, it makes I think it makes like almost 1,300 at the wheels, and
That's
the car weighs
up.
less than like 2,000. The guy's awesome. Yeah, that's it.
That's what's up. Yeah, we need videos of that. Stay tuned in the Insiders Lounge. James is going to post some videos.
All right.
All right, let's go through some of your questions. If you guys have any questions about DCCD, I want to hear them. Okay, now's the time to hit me up. Let's hear it.
I had a question. Can you ruin the DCCD unit, so center diff unit, with driving with full lock in the dry?
Yes. It's super hard on it. And essentially what you would do is you can feel it when you're turning that stuff is binding up, essentially. And these are still like, it's like a plated diff. Okay. And after a while, those plates will wear out. High mileage DCCD cars that have been ran around at full lock for a long time will have problems. thankfully, when you're just driving down the highway, your diff's normally open. So if just normal standard driving isn't going to mess a diff up too much, but a ton of track driving can wear, or like rally use or something like that, can actually wear a DCCD differential out. There are some companies out there from sketchy, Eastern European places that are really big into rally, that do sell DCCD replacement like clutches, and so you can get those. But I mean, for the most part, a street-driven DCCD, and even like a fairly aggressively tracked DCCD gearbox or diff should be fine for a really long time. But if you're running around at full lock a lot, yeah, you can wear stuff out. It's not designed to be done. It'd be just like, it's not quite as bad, but look at it kind of like a transfer case with a four-wheel drive vehicle. Like, that's why you can't drive down the road with a transfer case of a four-wheel drive vehicle. You can't be in quote-unquote four-wheel drive in your truck all the time, because you'll burn the transfer case up. Because the front and the rear wheels do need to move at slightly different speeds. So, all right. Let's try to get some of these questions. We got quite a few. I saw a big one down here, Maniac. I find manual on Ice Track magic. I've had many trips to ice and ice events, tested auto plus minus and all steps of manual. Found that the manual is more predictable to drift on ice compared to auto, since I knew the diff. And this, he's got a really good point here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
On asphalt, though, I prefer auto minus, a little more tail happy, still stable. Maniac, that totally makes sense. If you're doing ice racing and you're finding the car extremely unpredictable, maybe messing around with manual might be a good idea for you, especially if you're ice racing, because you have no traction. Ice racing is a total riot, by the way. If you've never done it, it is about the most fun you can have with the least amount of wear on your car. It is, you're sideways the whole time and you're going like 25 miles an hour. And the worst thing you're going to do is scratch up your bumper a little bit because you hit a little more solid hunk of snow. Wisconsin ice racing is a riot. But yeah, if you were to put it into manual and you're finding it more predictable, that's why, because you're not waiting for that. Diff's probably freaking out. You got wheels moving in all sorts of different directions. I will say, if you have a aftermarket DCCD controller, will do better in that situation than I think the OEM one will. And the reason for that is the OEM one is screwing around a lot with wheel speed sensors, and ice tends to do some just wacky stuff with that. And I think it freaks DCCD out. That's my theory. But manual, you get rid of a lot of that. So if you are ice racing, that's a really good example of when you may want to mess around with manual mode. A Closet says Map DCCD has a calibration for the G sensor if it's a bit off from flat. It's in the manual. And they didn't used to have that, and I'm happy they do now. And either way, you want to do that. Even if once you get the car level and where it's going to be at, the chances of you hitting dead level with your G sensor wherever you put it's going to be near impossible. So you want to make sure if you do install an aftermarket DCCD controller that you follow the directions extraordinarily closely. Renegade WRX, you were talking about braking axles without a DCCD controller. And I've been running Adam's old RS without a controller for years of drag racing autocross and haven't had any issues with it. Well, you've been lucky. And it could depend on, weight, what you're doing with it, how much power. When you launch, are you overpowering the tires? So then, it's less of a shock to the axles. Or there's a lot of variables to that, but I will tell you that there are a lot of guys who I've seen just constantly breaking rear axles due to leaving their diff open, finally getting a DCCD controller, and not only cutting piles of time off their 60-foot, they stop breaking stuff. Question. I have a 2000 RS with a full 06 STI swap. I bet you're having a riot, aren't you? I have yet to get the factory DCCD to work. Don't even try. The system works fine until the car is turned on. Once it stops working, ABS and brake lights both turn on. Is this worth trying to get the factory? Well, you answered. I kind of answered the question for you. Just get an aftermarket controller. If you're putting DCCD in a chassis that trans didn't come from, save yourself the bullshit. Save yourself the bullshit and get an aftermarket DCCD controller. It'll just work. Your life will be so much simpler. So you're dealing with an older RS GC style thing, or you're putting it in a bug eye. You know, it's such a pain in the ass. Even if you're going like, let's say you win an 04 STI, or you've got an 04 WRX and you've got a full 04 STI and you're bringing it all over. The amount of wiring you'd have to bring over just for DCCD when you could have just got an aftermarket controller, it's ridiculous. You can even get an aftermarket controller to operate the lights in the cluster now. DCCD Pro can do that. So if that's cool. One of those things that's really important to you, do it that way. Mr. Aldrich, how are you planning to control in the future when you move to M-Tron? I don't know. I have heard that M-Tron has native DCCD control. It might be something we play around with. But to start, I'm probably just going to keep stuff where it is using my map DCCD controller. And then we may move into that at a later date. Can you send me the map using... I didn't change the map in my map DCCD, Randy. I got to be real. The map it came with, it's auto mode. It works great. It's one of those things, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What do we got? I have a 2011 STI that seems to have the front diff bind up on deceleration on a curve ever since I put the 15 steering rack in. Is there anything that can be adjusted with DCCD to help this? More than likely, no. I bet you there's more going on there than... Are you sure it's your front diff binding up and maybe not like an axle on its way out? You'd be really surprised at how much that happens. Or maybe at the same time you lowered the car and that put the axle at a different angle. I'm more willing to believe that's an axle problem showing itself as a diff issue. Now I can't but DCCD is really not going to be able to help with that, unfortunately. What do we got? Any idea why DCCD would stop working after removing ABS from a swap GC8 with a DCCD Pro controller? Sounds like, given your description, it uses a yaw sensor, and it seems like it should still work. Huh. I'm not 100% sure, my guy. Are you using that same controller? Maybe something fried with a controller. Have you tried using a different controller? DCCD is pretty robust. I can't say I've ever heard of anybody frying DCCD. It's an extraordinarily simple, it's a very, very simple device. So I don't know about that. That one's a tough one, man. I wish I had a better answer for you, but that's a rough one. Man, I'm loving all these questions, by the way, and it looks like we got a whole lot of new faces. We got a lot of new faces here. This is great.
VDC on a 2011 STI not liking the faster 2015 steering rack. Yeah, it's plausible. Okay.
That is very plausible. And so, well, hold on. Where'd you see that?
That's Maniac just posted that at the bottom of the chat. So the bigger answer here is if you're doing any kind of shenanigans.
That makes a lot of sense.
Especially on a car that's got a swapped steering rack, for example. Turn VDC all the way off. Go full manual. Don't mess around with any of the traction control stuff if at all possible. So one of the things that can screw with DCCD is understand that when you change the steering rack, steering angle is something that Subaru takes into account. And I'm wondering if it's seeing like weird wheel speeds, based on like the scrub of a 2015 rack turning the wheels more at a particular angle, and it's freaking out. There might be some truth in that. Oh man, okay. Trying to make my way through this. Yeah, we got a big audience today.
This is
50 people.
awesome.
Look at
I am
that.
loving seeing all these new people, and keep the questions coming. I'll keep answering questions about this as long as I can. My '07 STI isn't working properly, but anyways, what's the position? What position does it get locked into? Well, I guess I'm not 100% sure. So if are you talking about an '07 trans and something else, or your '07 STI? This was from Dirty Blue '06. If it's your actual '07 STI, it's gonna default into auto. You have to put it into manual, and then wherever the dial is where it's going to go within its lock range, I guess is a good way of putting it. Johnny Trans posted a DCCD diff. I'm not sure what year that is. I think that's an older one. I'd like to know more about what he's got going on there. I've seen more rear transfer bearing failures than DCCD. Yes, you're going to see it's going to happen. Okay, transfer gear bearings in Subarus tend to be something that it just they're under the loads of that are under some really goofy. There's a lot going on with those, and so they tend to get tweaked under lots of pressure beating on them. Hopefully you catch them when they're only making noise or you're just hearing some bearing whine or whatever. If you're doing a lot of drag launching or anything else, prepare to break them. We actually make a aftermarket transfer gears for a reason, because they're something that break quite a bit when you're beating on these cars and you're making big power. Only DCCD failures I've seen come from getting stuck in snow or breaking an axle at the drag strip with DCCD in lock mode. Yeah, basically, the only time I've seen DCCD actually fail was when people were doing something really extreme. So, Spider Plus that can utilize 2 ABS sensor inputs. So, OG Spider Plus. Well, there you go. There's a share on the Facebook 0814 forum. I suspect that's a bunch of us, and that's awesome. Again, thank you, Giro. I actually was the one that posted it over there. I'm happy to see you guys over here. That's cool. What else? I'm going to keep trying to rip through here. Will this be available to listen to later? I missed it. Yes. We post these up on. We post these up on a few different things, but the two main ones are Spotify and Apple Podcasts. This is being recorded right now, so all your questions will be on there. And we have a whole host of older shows with all sorts of cool stuff, talking with different shops around the country, lots of different topics, and we plan to continue and do other fun topics. And if you guys have any ideas for topics, feel free to post them in the chat here or in the Discord in some of the other sections, or the Facebook group, the IAG Subaru Insiders Lounge, post it up in there. What's your VIR time? Unfortunately, I've never been to VIR. What's your VIR time? I'd like to know. Johnny Trans. Again, I need to find out who you are. I like you. And I think your name is hilarious. Load fluid seemingly the number one cause of burnout transfer bearings. That happens a lot, especially with older transmissions. People tend to neglect to check their gear oil, and they'll get like a diff seal leak, like a front diff, like the axle seal start leaking up in there, and they'll slowly drip all their oil out, and we'll have a bad time. Well, that's cool.
Vader's transmission builder. All right.
Nice. Who else do you? Nice. I've always wanted to go to VIR. Did you guys see? Did you see Air Slayer? Set that road and track. What is it? The VIR, whatever their grand course.
Ran Carr's
Um,
door slammer record, I think.
that's pretty wild. I'd love to see how far off of that we'd be with Boogie. That would be entertaining to try that. They don't run that configuration a whole lot though.
The NASCAR Garage 56 car beat the time by the Air Slayer, and Scott Speed was heading out from the track, and they called him, and he turned around and put down another lap that was like a second faster. So Subaru made it personal.
Adam from IAG actually posted a pretty cool PDF on how to use an Adreno board and make your own steering angle sensor. That is really cool. Yeah, you could build your own steering angle sensor using Adreno boards. That's kind of sick. Not gonna lie, that's cool. We need more of that. PPG drag V2 parts supplied by IAG. Yeah, we've been working with IAG at PPG. I need more caffeine. We've been working with PPG for a while with a lot of different projects, but that drag gear set is sick. 225.6 around VIR. That's cooking, man. Any other tracks on the East Coast you've been to? Maybe we can figure out how have you been to Lime Rock? Have you been to Mid Ohio? What are you running around there? Maybe we can compare from that. T56 blend with IAG XD clutch. Yeah, that's the hot setup. That thing's gonna boogie. I'm assuming it's got our transfer gears in it too. Yeah, Scott Speed turned the 225.6 after being told to turn around. Yeah, he was leaving, and then that NASCAR build whatever ran a slightly faster time, and he turned around and came back.
Yeah, that's just so cool.
The story's great. Oh, it's a translator for the steering angle sensor, so it
yeah.
I understand what he's saying now. Yeah, so the angle makes sense for both ends. That's
for the
cool.
angle. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to touch base on Griot's question.
Yeah.
For a 6-speed, 04 6-speed going into a 13 WRX, the main thing you got to look for is there's half moons on the front differential. So pretty much on an 04 STI trans, they're going to use those axles are female on the front, right? But your car uses male axles. So with that, what I would recommend doing is taking a paint pen and marking each half moon, right? So you're going to draw a line between the half moon and the actual case. Mark that, and then what you're going to end up doing is you're going to unscrew those half moons in the transmission. So that's because what that is that's what's setting the preload on that front differential. Sundial, correct.
Sundial, yeah. You were calling it half moons, but I was like, it's sundial.
It's been a very long day, man.
I got you, man. I'm with you. So yeah, the sundial.
Okay. Yeah. So what are you gonna? I don't know. Why I'm calling it half moons. I just said half. Okay, whatever. So with that, you're gonna unscrew those. You're gonna count those rotations, right? If you're like me and you're stupid, you're gonna write that on the side of the trans as well in the paint pen, so you don't forget how many you just did. You're gonna acquire. You can buy a set of. Yes. So you're going to pull those out. You're going to remove the stubs. They'll pop right out. If they don't pop out, you can screw in if I remember correctly, you could screw into them. It's been a while since I've done this. And you could put a slide hammer on it, pop them out. Then from there, you're going to get a set of newer sundials from a newer car. It could be, let's just do like an 07 STI trans, right? You're going to take those and you're going to mark it on the end, same spot where you mark the other ones, and you're going to start spinning them in, and you do the same exact amount of rotations. You're going to remember, that's why you counted them, wrote it down. Once that's in, the preload will be set the same on the front differential, and then your original axles for your car will actually pop right in and be fine. Don't forget to change your axle seals and stuff while you're doing it, because you will need to do that.
Yep. Yeah, so the oddball with at least U.S. domestic market transes is the 04 STI. So 05 and up, it's fairly straightforward, but the 04 is the oddball.
Yeah, so
Or JDM transes, earlier JDM transes are the same way you're talking about too.
Yeah, Adam says buy a newer 6-speed. That's true too, because there's some GD guy begging for your transmission right now, especially the earlier bug eye guys. If you buy any 08 to current STI 6-speed, that is a direct drop in for there. You don't need the speed sensor that's located on the bell housing for your car. What's the other big thing with that too is if you bought the complete swap with the rear differential, you have to sell.
Hold on, I think we're
all right.
So the 13 WRX still needs a plug-in speed sensor, but there's an easy fix to that. There's that speed sensor simulator vehicle. DCCD Pro makes this. VSS Pro is what they call it. Right. Yeah. So the WRX is so you would want anything 08 and newer will not have a vehicle speed sensor on the trans. Mm-hmm. So you are going to need to have some sort of vehicle speed sensor simulator because the STIs didn't have the vehicle speed sensor on the trans. That's why essentially an 07 STI and an 08 STI trans, gearing wise and everything else are the same, but one has a vehicle speed sensor. The 07 has a vehicle speed sensor on it, so it just plugs in, no problem. And the later ones don't, so you've got to do like the VSS Pro thing.
Yeah, dude, it's probably been 10 years since I've swapped one.
No, you're good. This is that conversation that I have a lot because I'm dealing with all these guys with the older crap, so they're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't.
And so yes, late 04 did have the axle swap. I do remember that.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, that's pretty much that. But majority of the 04s are going to have that, I guess, female axles in the front. But late 04 did have a swap. And it obviously carried on for the rest of the STI's lineage.
Mm-hmm. Stubs or not, it's just that those are the odd ones, and then we dealt with a whole lot of when we were at 6-star, a lot of the JDM swaps. That's like hit or miss too. Does it got stubs or not?
Mm-hmm.
So, December 2003 build date or later, and I believe what D. Alex Butler says because that man knows his shit. So there you go.
Yeah, that is the GD guru.
Yep, that guy knows a lot of that old OG stuff right off the. He runs Track Stubies on Facebook. Mm-hmm. Great dude. Glad you asked. And yeah, that's what this is for. That's why we're trying to do more of these is we try to do these every Thursday. We have some form of topic or we have somebody on, but we try to open the floor up for questions the best we can. I think we need to have more open floor discussion stuff like this. 6 MTs for bug eyes. Yeah, I'm telling you. Just GD chassis in general are fantastic. I love them to death. And that comes from a GC guy. So, Johnny Trans, I'd love to be on the show. You know what? Maybe we'll bring you on the show, my dude. I'd love to talk transmissions. I really don't have anybody else to bring on for transmission specific, how to set things, like what do you got to look for stuff, and maybe we can just blow you up with. So why don't we talk about that after the show, and maybe hit me up on Facebook or something. We'll see what that looks like. I'd be super stoked to talk about that. So Maniac, I'm just gonna post this question again since it's so far up in the chat. You mentioned, oh, sorry, man, if I missed something. Guys, if there's something further up in the chat that I missed, feel free to ask it again. You are not gonna offend me. I'm more than happy to help you out. I will answer it. If I missed it and I didn't get to it for any reason, please just repost it. But I'm gonna. You mentioned the DCCD without helper diff unlocks the clutch pack with handbrake use. Does that apply to the 4159 cars? It basically, if you have a 354 rear diff or a 1.1, the 1.1 diffs, or any of the 41 to 59 torque split, when you pull the e-brake, it does go into open, but you still have the helper diff. And that is really rough doing e-brake spins with the helper diff. So I really don't recommend it. Will it put DCCD into open? Yes. Should you do it? No. That's also, that's a great sheet. That's a great sheet. That's an awesome chart. But yeah, so basically Maniac with the newer ones, if you're messing around on ice or something, super low traction situations, the chance of you hurting something extremely low. If you're doing it on pavement,
Will I do it? Yes.
Johnny,
I
does
like
this
this guy.
also have oil squirters in the trans? Oil pump?
which ones have oil pumps and which ones don't? That's since we're
Oh,
on
that's
basically just talking about six
late
speed.
07 and up. Late 07 and
Okay.
up will have the oil pumps.
Well, the 04 and 05s had oil pumps too. The 06s don't. They're the oddballs. The 06s and
Oh no,
I
those are
guess,
the early ones. I might be messing
Yeah.
this whole thing up, dude. It's been
it's cool. It's cool. I got you. Honestly, if I'm correct, the 08 and newer doesn't have oil pump either. That's only the early ones.
I'm not going crazy. Okay, I was like,
Yeah.
I remember that. All right.
07 limited had oil pumps. The limited the only one with the oil pump? I thought the 07 STI had oil pump. 06 didn't. 05 and 04 did. And I thought in 08 one of the changes they made is they got rid of the oil pumps. And it's one of the reasons that they eat third and fourth on track all the time.
Yeah, they don't have oil pumps. That I can test you. I know
Yeah.
GR transmissions, the older GD stuff. It's been a very long time since I've manually done those. But yeah, they certainly don't have them on 08 and up.
Yeah, the oddball was the 06. And if you ever look at, that's why 06 swaps were they were the cheapest trains you could buy was an 06. If you were to go buy a new 6-speed, they were almost $1,000 cheaper than an 07 new. And they didn't have an oil pump. So, yeah.
I just remember when I got my 07 6-speed for my 04, it didn't have the oil pump, and I was so upset. But I took a gamble on it, and I think I paid nothing for it, so I was pretty happy with that. But yeah, I know mid 07. I think he said limited. I think it was all mid 07. Well, like last half year had it, and I know the earlier ones did.
Yeah, I know the 0405 have them for sure. I was very hell bent, and I think all of the JDM STIs have them too. There wasn't the 06 is kind of an oddball year. You know, you got the weird trans where you have a 3.54 rear diff, but you got the really short 1 through 4 and the long 5th and 6th. Then you didn't get the oil pump, and like the 06 is really just kind of the oddball. It's like you still have side feed injectors, you know. You kind of got of the GD chassis. Like the 04 and the 06 are the two you want to get are the 05 and 07. The 04 and the 06 are odd ducks for their own reason.
05 is my favorite year.
It's the best year.
I think it looked the best. The interior's the best. I mean, I had 07 STI interior, but the I don't know, 05 is that's my thing, man. And this is a very poor choice. I'm probably gonna eat these words. I don't like Hawkeyes. I love blob eyes. I don't like bug eyes.
I'm gonna say it too. I've never been a fan of the Hawkeye.
Nope, never been. But I love blob eyes. That's my thing.
Yep, I'm a big fan. Not gonna lie, love me some blob eye. But what I really like is the driving dynamics of the 05. You get all the best stuff. The only downside, the two downsides to that, the 05 are the long 5th and 6th. It would have been better if it either came from the factory with the longer 1st or 4th. That kind of matched up, or they put the JDM 5th and 6th in it, which are a total ride to drive if you ever get a chance. And I wish it had top feed injectors. But all stuff the aftermarket can fix.
The synchros in those suck too, in the 04, 05s.
Well, the biggest reason the synchros, they do suck, but they made improvements. But one of the reasons that they went to shit so bad was that massive gap between 4th and 5th. There's a huge speed difference there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know how to. What he's asking is the 06 STI trans still as strong as other STI transmissions? Essentially, yes. Okay, it's still just as strong. The 08 and plus, the 08 plus, since they don't have the oil pump, you can get those transmissions kind of hot. Now, I haven't seen that type of failure as much in the 06, but 06 is 1 year and 08 plus is many, many, many years. And neither of those have the oil pump specifically. So on track, you might run into a problem, but like drag racing, street use, big power stuff, they're going to be just as strong.
Yeah, I mean, I ran an '06 trans for a long time
Yeah.
with drag racing stuff and street stuff and heavy highway racing stuff. No problems with them. They work fine.
Yeah.
The only real downside to them, I guess, would be the gear ratios. However, it depends on how you're using it.
Yes.
You know, it's the same gear ratios for '04 to '06 and '07 up. They changed it. That's the only thing with the '06. Other than that, you have pretty much the updated trans for, you know, the rest of it. So it's not a bad thing. You have the newer diffs, you have the newer synchros. It's a good transmission. There's nothing wrong with it.
Oh yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that trans. In fact, they did get the upgraded synchros. Yeah, you're right. So they're less of an issue than the '05 from that 4 to 5 grind that tends to come in, but it's still got the crap gearing.
I think the reason why they ditched the oil pump and just stuck to ditched the oil pump specifically for '06 was for the upgraded synchros. They probably thought they didn't need it, and they could have some cost saving that way. And then, you know, throughout '06 and early '07, they probably realized they didn't need it again for that box, so they put it back in for halfway through '07. Because any OE manufacturer is not updating or changing things unless they have to, and let's make that very clear. So that's probably an issue they found with warranty or something along those lines, or no, who knows? We'll never know. We're not Subaru corporate, but that is a change they made. And then they probably figured it out. No, wait, I don't know what they changed particularly. I'm not a transmission builder, but in '08 to current, they don't have the oil pumps and they share the same synchros. So who knows?
Ryan, pump was removed for weight and cost per the factory class. Oh, that makes sense. Again, no offense, Ryan, I don't trust half of what Subaru says.
Yeah.
If we trusted what Subaru said, to be perfectly honest, we wouldn't be here right now fixing everything that Subaru has screwed up over the years.
They did do the 6-speed right, though, for the most part.
Well, they didn't do it. That's why.
Well, they contracted the right guy.
Yes, they contracted the right people to do it correctly. All right, cool, because I just swapped an '06 drivetrain in my bug eye. Yeah, and dude, you're going to have a great time with that. And it will be infinitely better than any 5-speed you would have ever had in there. So especially if you got a good deal on it, you know, it was in good shape, you're going to have a great time with that. Enjoy it, have an awesome time. Don't think that is going to be your limiting factor in any way. We're still taking questions though. James, I'm happy you hopped on here.
I've been taking phone calls, and I just took payment for a couple of your customers.
I appreciate it. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, no problem. But I was gonna say I mean, here's the thing with the '06 trans. I have put a lot of power and a lot of abuse through them. They don't care. You'll be just fine.
No, it's again, it isn't like they changed the physical design of it. It still has, you know, that same beefy shafts and everything else as far as power, you know, power holding capability, at least over, you know, short bursts, it's going to be the same. You know, there could be an argument that like the oil pump would help circulate oil and temps would stay down a little bit for the ones that do have oil pumps for like track use, but it's a different animal, you know? So the story of how it developed is pretty awesome. Well, if you ever get a chance, I'd like to read that. But the reality of it is, it just comes down to Subaru is making more power than their crappy trans designed to make 90 horsepower was able to handle anymore.
Yeah, you could retrofit the older the pumps on that case. However, you're not really doing much there. I mean, I've seen some people do the pumps while adding an actual inline fluid cooler, which is actually pretty dope.
Yeah, now a fluid cooler would be sick. Now, if you were really going hardcore, and let's say this was like an endurance car or something like that, the juice may be worth the squeeze for that. For your average person, even somebody who's going to be doing track time or whatever, maybe just put some better fluid in it. I mean, Motul makes their competition is a 7140 now, I think is what the competition weight gear oil is. Just get some better fluid, you're probably going to be fine.
A good fluid is going to make a world of difference. You don't need to get all extra, because the second you start adding more failure points, you're going to have a failure. So just keep it simple.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what it is just in general with almost everything on these cars. You're going to hear James and I preach the same thing if you ever call in. Keep it stupid simple. KISS principle with almost everything. The simpler you keep it, the more reliable your car is going to be. It's just
A lot of people just don't get it though. With
No.
here's
Hey,
the
I'll say it.
trick with
I'll say
Subarus.
it. I'm gonna say it.
Yeah.
Legacy GT owners. I said it.
I mean, they're not the only ones. You get the
Well, you know what,
WRX guys too.
Sure, but let's be real.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we'll go back into the demographic of that. I'll say the big spiel when it comes to Subarus and how to make them happy, make them reliable. The less this goes with almost any kind of car though. The less
Yeah.
you touch, you change what you need to change.
Yes.
If you don't need to touch it, leave it alone. And the same thing, in my opinion, my philosophy with DCCD. If you don't have to touch it, leave it alone.
Yep.
And that's going to prolong things.
Auto works great.
The second you start messing with things that you shouldn't be, or if you, another way I like to phrase it is, if you think you know a lot about it, you probably don't when it comes to weird, mysterious stuff. Just don't touch it. And you're going to have a happy experience with the car. The second you start getting to things you shouldn't,
that's when stuff starts breaking, or you start messing up. You open up Pandora's box real fast with this stuff. Real fast. If you think you know better, you don't.
Yeah, so
you're doing stuff to be different. That's the one that kills me too. Well, I'm doing it because everybody does it this way, and I want to. There's a reason everybody does it that way.
Yeah, these cars are so simple now. I mean, the formula's already, the formula's done. So if you want to make 700, 800, whatever with the car, you can just do that. You can do that in 2 seconds for someone's build. It's an easy thing. But when it comes to guys trying to do, I want to put this turbo on this car, and I want to run a top mount air to water, and I want to, run meth on top of this and this and this. You're setting yourself up for so much pain that it's not worth it, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be left with a quality result. You might see some proper things, everything, if the stars align and everything works, but there's a good chance you'll be fighting it the entire time. So just leave it simple. Don't retrofit. All this spawned from, don't put an oil pump on your transmission that didn't have it. There's no reason for it.
Yeah, unless you, there has to be, honestly, and in the end, you're probably better off just buying a trans with an oil pump. If that's what you need. If you're that far in, you got to ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze? For anything you do. But a really good question up here. Adam Wood asks, is it possible to install a DCCD diff into a JDM non-DCCD 6-speed? Ish. You have to get the entire ass end of the trans. It's not like you can just pop it in and run some wires to it. It's not that bad, but that's the situation. To be perfectly honest, with a 5-speed, I'd want to tell you yay or nay on that. I think you can do it with just installing the ass of the trans, but I cannot. I haven't had my hands on enough DCCD 5-speeds. I think I've only seen 3 of them in my damn life. We just didn't get them here in the States, so that's a rough one.
I mean, you're gonna hear my brutally honest response to that.
Sure.
Why? Just put a 6-speed in the car. Just don't.
Don't screw around with DCCD. Just 5 speeds in general. If it's broke, get a 6-speed. That's
if it's not broke, get a 6-speed.
Start saving for your 6-speed. All right. The DC unit specific for a 5-speed to use. Okay, well there you go. Ryan kind of settled that. So you can't take 5-speed DCCD and stick it in a 6-speed if that's what you were asking. Okay, Dewey and James, you talked about non-OEM DCCD controllers. Yes, we went over it pretty extensively earlier. So what I'm going to recommend for anybody who might be coming in on this later, this will be up in podcast form. And the original post that you found this on, it gets edited to have those links in it. Go listen to this in a podcast. And also with those, we have all of our old podcasts on there. Please listen, please share, please comment. Let us know if you hate it. And if you got new topics you want us to talk about, come over, either drop it in the chat here next week or pop in to the Facebook group, the IAG Insider Subaru Lounge Facebook group, and say, hey, I'd really like you guys to do a podcast on this. It's something I've always wondered about. It'd be great. Or you can pop it right here on our Discord. We've got lots of different stuff here.
I still want to do the trash builds one. I mean, I'm all for that.
Oh, you and I are we need to have I want an argument on how we can make, we're going to either set a budget and how would you go about it, or customer states, I have this and I want to do this. Like I got a few different ways of how I want to go about it. That show needs to happen, and we're gonna have a very good time with it.
I'm ruthless with that. If you guys don't know me, I'm very straightforward. I am cheap as hell. So if you want to start doing some sketchy shit, I'm about that.
All for it. Nitrous, easiest way to get silly. I guess. Ryan at Turbo Time, we have a Torsen front RA DCCD 5-speed in the rally car because we had a failure of the non-RA DCCD box in the previous. It was cheaper to get and that makes sense. If you can make those decisions, the majority, if you're trying to go down that route, that's great. I wouldn't tell most people to go down that route. I get that that's cheaper. My 2 cents is if it failed on me once, I'd be dumb. I'd be done with it. I'd be absolutely done with it. I would be getting a 6-speed, so it didn't do that to me again. I couldn't trust a 5-speed in a competition environment. I
went to the 5-speed driving down the street.
Yes, it's bad. There's a Subaru guy here in Chicago that ran it. Okay, I want Adam to make sure that is a past tense thing. He did run nitrous in his STI, and it burned to the ground on the side of the highway.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah,
I did see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
we're not mentioning names there. Okay, no names.
To my knowledge, there's only been a couple people that have done it. I've done it. Adam has actually done it. Adam at IAG has done it quite a bit, and we've talked about it. He's way more into the nitrous stuff than I ever was.
Yeah.
But nitrous in a Subaru is fun, but it really depends on. This is completely off topic. I'm sorry, but
we're late show. You can say whatever you want.
it depends on how you're going to be using it.
Yeah.
I didn't use it for the power increase. I used it to get into boost faster.
Yes.
But you can definitely. This is a different topic. This is a whole thing to actually utilize nitrous correctly. Because I've done it in Supras, I've done it in all sorts of different stuff. Mustangs, everything else. But when it comes to nitrous and STI, is it possible you can do it? Absolutely. Does anybody really mess with it? Not really. Not many imports are messing with it, I'd say nowadays, except for a few R35 GTR guys. Some of the old school RB.
You got some really big turbo Supras were big into it for a little while, and then
they're still into it for the most part. But the issue is that's back when we ran race gas. Ethanol has more so taken over that.
Adam said it perfect. I didn't say safe. I said easy.
Oh yeah. You can blow your car sky high with that if you have like a backfire and you don't have a plate.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Ever seen it?
A lot of it was
a nitrous backfire. Google that.
You see a lot of it went away due to speaking of a nitrous backfire. I got an amazing story about that. But you see a lot of that went away due to newer turbo technology and newer tuning. We were able to, mess with launch controls came a long way, and you can get cars pretty damn into boost without having to use nitrous to spool giant turbos. But
yeah, we're not using cast wheel 42, O2s anymore. So things have changed.
I grabbed this off a whole set off of, a frickin' freighter.
Yeah, the old whole sets. Those things still run though. That's the thing. Those things
ain't ever gonna break.
No. The only thing that's comparable to that nowadays is the Borg Warner Airworks stuff. If it's meant for a diesel, you could just put it on wherever the hell you want. It doesn't care. I like to call them the AK-47 of turbos. Drop it in mud, pick it back up, and it's going to work just fine. Don't even have to clean it out.
So
don't do that.
2004, just before I got out of the Marine Corps, okay, there was already guys coming back from their first tour in Iraq. And we're at this it was an overnight drag race event they used to do called Freaky Friday out there. And so we're near the track. It's all Marines. That's everybody who's there because we're right near the base. And this DSM is running, and I think he grabs third, and something happens, and essentially it was a nitrous backfire inside of the. No, I take it back. He was in the pits. And either way, he blew the top off of his intake manifold and dented his
He
hood.
tried
It
to
was
purge and
rowdy.
accidentally sprayed.
I don't know what the hell happened. All I know is this thing exploded and it was due to nitrous. But the explosion was crazy. It was louder than shit. And it went off and every Marine there dropped on the ground. I can't, dude, the whole place, 99% Marines, all of us dropped right to the dirt. Because that's just what you're taught when big explosions happen. It wasn't anybody getting behind things or anything. Everybody just smacked to the ground.
Yeah. I mean, a nitrous backfire. I've never seen one in real life. I've seen it once, I think maybe twice. I don't remember. But they are violent. They are so violent. It will absolutely. Your hood is gone. Everything on top of your engine bay is gone. That engine's it's a piece of scrap metal at that point. It is very aggressive. And Adam said, with proper engine management, yes, especially when the management's, if you have it tied and this is the whole car's designed around it, it's fairly safe. You're not really gonna have many problems. However, most people in this community don't have that. Most guys, back in the day, at least when we're doing it, we're on a Cobb Axis port spraying nitrous on a 25 dry shot, trying to get the car to come on boost. It shouldn't be like that anymore. It doesn't have to be. Like you mentioned, Link, Motec, all that kind of stuff. They all could control it, no problem.
Yeah. That stuff didn't exist back when people were screwing with nitrous, though. In 2005, your UTEC ain't gonna control nitrous for shit.
Dude, I had a UTEC.
I think we all did. All right, I've got a good question that I want to answer, and I think we're gonna end pretty close to this. Dare I mention 5-speed blast plates? All right, I've got my own. I'm just gonna say my piece on this. Look, man, blast plates are snake oil. All right, the case flex is a very, very small amount of what makes a 5-speed a complete piece of shit. All right, that you aren't saving anything. It's not going to fix. There's what absolutely little bit, minute amount that might help is not going to fix anything else. It's not going to make the gear any thicker. It's not going to make the main shafts any thicker. Your transfer gears are still a joke. Your center diff's a joke. Your front diff's a joke. Everything's still a joke. The blast plate isn't fixing anything. If you think you're going to be able to stick hunks of metal on the side of this damn trans and it's going to magically make your 5-speed good to 400 wheel or something, it's not. It's not. A 5-speed... anything over basic stage 2 power is on borrowed time. So blast plates are an absolute no-go. What's your take?
All right. So here's the thing. I'm the first to admit if I don't know something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now I thought I did with this, and I've been corrected by somebody who knows a lot more than this than me. So when it comes to the 5 speeds, I don't know much about them because, frankly, I've always done STIs. If I had a WRX, I put a 6-speed in it because I just avoided that problem entirely. Yeah. When it comes to blast plates, I was in the assumption they were pure snake oil and they don't do anything. However, the guys at ZF Design, that's all they do. They do 6-speed stuff, right? They do 5-speed stuff. I think they probably do more than anybody else right now at this point. He had I don't remember exactly what he said, so I don't want to quote him, but he said people who have opinion, it's not entirely correct. There is something to be gained there where it does help. However, I'm not 100% sure. If you have specific questions on blast plates, I would implore you to call ZF Design and have that discussion with them specifically on the 5-speed aspect of it. Now, 6-speed stuff I can answer, but when it comes to 5-speed stuff, I have not worked with it enough to really comment on it. My whole experience when it comes to 6 speeds is I put them in, I don't have problems with it. I have a 5-speed, I have problems with it. So I never really spent much time with it. So that's where I'll end that. I am not proficient.
That's fair.
Comment.
I that's no matter which way I've seen it, and we bit into it back when I was at 6-star fairly hard, and where you started seeing a ton of it was the 11 plus WRXs with the VF52s. Blast plates made another comeback. Okay, this was probably the third time I've seen some other company attempt blast plates, and they started making the rounds all over the place. They didn't save those cars for shit. They were blowing up left and right all over the place again.
Yeah. So I think this installation thing is. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. But when it comes to
maybe
for the 5 speeds, it's not going to help you. I mean, here's what I'll tell you. I will take a stock 150,000 mile STI 6-speed over a fresh, fully done up PPG 5-speed every day.
Yes, 100%.
Cost you less money. They're more reliable.
You get 3 diffs
with it.
Well,
Yeah,
2 diffs.
It's a much better system than any sort of built 5-speed, in my opinion. Now, there's, I'm not going to get into the arguments of it, but the 6-speed is a much better bet. For 99.9, repeating 9% of people do not build the 5-speed unless for some reason you have to, which is, I don't even know why you would.
It'd have to be some stupid class rule that forced you to keep it. So, so you 10-speed has straight cut PPG sets. Again, like that gear set's going to cost you what, $6,000? Buy a freaking 6-speed.
Have you ever driven a 5-speed? A straight cut 5-speed.
Yeah, you ever driven a dog box 5-speed? They're fun.
It's dog shit. I hate it.
Oh, I love dog gears. Like I got to mess around with a Medina dogs straight cut dog gear set. It was probably the most expensive 5-speed box ever. Okay, this was realistically that trans was probably about $12,000 to put together. Okay, it stupid, completely ridiculous, and it was fun to drive. It just glid right into the next gear, and you had to shift it really quick, or the dogs would start bouncing. You have to, because dog boxes are goofy.
That's everything with the dog box.
But, but it was like strangely light. It was fun to drive, but you're still better off with a 6-speed because it still had an open front diff. It still had a shit center diff. And yeah, you could go buy a diff and all that shit for it. But now your pricier fancy trans just went up to what, 15, and it's still not stronger than the stock 6-speed.
Yeah. So I'm bringing a couple of things they're talking about. I'm going to bounce around a little bit. Yeah.
I got you, Adam. I'll back that up in a sec.
Yeah, that's another thing I was going to bring on. But anytime you drive a straight cut or anything with dog gears, right?
Dog gears are different.
You have to actually bang that transmission. There's no normal driving that transmission. They're simply, you're driving the car around, you're going to get groceries in it. You are slamming that thing to the next gear. There is no chill with that.
You have to move very deliberately.
Yes. The 6-speed, you don't have to do that, which is a beautiful thing. Now, one thing that's a problem with the 6-speed is in a weak point when you start getting a big power. So when I'm talking big power, I'm really talking like 800 plus. A lot of 700 horsepower guys are also doing it. They're buying the straight cut gear set that we offer. So that is not a dog box. That is a straight cut gear set. So it's synchroed. Yep. So you can still
synchroed, but it's straight cut. So you can drive it like a human being. Now those gears will be a little bit. They'll have a whine to it because they're straight cut, and it's not even that bad to drive around in because our test cars that we had at IAG. Because they got full interior. It ain't bad at all. It's just the nice thing about it is you can put it into 5th or 6th and get out of the whiny stuff. So if you're cruising on the highway, it's not a problem at all.
Yeah, so that's a big thing. On the highway, 5th and 6th gear, it doesn't exist. It's only on the street, and I don't care what anybody says. When it comes to driving any sort of straight cut gear set around, you're just going to make noise. That's part of it. You can't fight physics on it. A helical gear set versus straight cut, you're going to get noise no matter what with a straight cut gear set. So our kit is great. People love it. I love it. I think it's fantastic. But if you're looking for an absolute quiet transmission that is built, that doesn't exactly,
you're not making enough horsepower.
Yeah.
With a quiet enough car for that to matter. If you're looking at this gear set, your car's loud. Okay, yes. And more that whine, it would be hard for you to hear over your exhaust.
Mm-hmm.
That's all there is to it. That's actually that A Claw Set just posted up a really great picture of a 5-speed next to a 6-speed, and you can literally just see the physical difference between the two. So
yeah, another big difference between the 5-speed and 6-speed is if you're swapping one out in the ground and you're laying on your back, I don't feel like I'm gonna die when I'm doing it with a 5-speed.
Mhm.
because they're small, they're light.
Oh yeah, they're
pick one
stupid
up.
light. You could do that in a parking lot. A 6-speed landed on your chest sucks.
That's pretty much it. I mean, sayonara, especially if you're by yourself.
Yep, it's awful.
I've gotten stuck with it before.
Yep.
It's not fun. Where you're in panic mode with a 6-speed dangling on top of you.
Yeah.
But the 5-speed, not a big deal. You can pick one up, move them around. 6-speed, I would recommend having a second person with you to pick it up. One from the tail housing, one from the bell housing, and walk around with it.
Renegade WRX says I was making 340 on my 5-speed, and I think that was pushing it. Horsepower, first off, I want to put this out here. Horsepower doesn't break shit. Torque does. So if you're making 340 on your 5-speed, I'm willing to believe if you had a newer 2.5 liter and you were making 340, I'm going to guess you're probably a VF52 car, because 340 is about right for a street-driven VF52 car. You were making 410 foot-pounds of torque, something like that. Yeah, you're just waiting. And a 5-speed won't break when you've got the money to buy a 6-speed. It's going to break when you're rolling out of McDonald's because you couldn't afford to go to Burger King, and you're going to slow shift second, and it's going to sound like somebody threw a bag of gravel inside of your trans.
All right, hold on. Just on the break here. Never disrespect McDonald's again.
What's cheaper than Burger King? I give me something.
Not much, but
you got to get a McDouble, my guy.
Burger King is gross. McDoubles are expensive.
I'll fight you.
McDoubles now are like $4 or $5.
Yeah, dude, have you seen that Wendy's is talking about doing surge pricing?
I'm not interested in that.
We should do surge pricing. How would everybody like if IAG during tax time we just increase the price on anything instead of having a sale?
Yeah.
Guess what? We're probably having a sale. Stay tuned. All right, guys. This has been kind of a long one, but I hope this was informative. Thank you all for showing up, especially all the new faces. This is great. If you can, do us a solid. Please share this. Share the Discord. Head over to the IAG Super Insiders Lounge and join up there. Ask questions there. And subscribe to the podcast. So if you do miss the live feed, you can go and listen to what you missed on the podcast. And we try to always have a good time and answer as many questions as we can. And you should have a good time, but you might accidentally learn something. And that's always fun too. Sometimes, I like learning things. But help us out. The more of us we get in here, the better the questions we get, the more we all learn. This is a community and we need to do it together. So, it's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun. James, thanks for coming on in the end. That was awesome. And we will see you guys next week. Appreciate it. See you guys.
See you guys.